Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, channel devoted to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and today these are my thoughts on Parks, a very lovely game. Okay, so this review is going to be very solo heavy. I've only really played this game solo. I do have a solo playthrough on the channel as well if you'd like to watch that. But I'm going to just talk about a little bit about the game in general first. Firstly, man, what a wonderful, wonderful theme. Now, the theme does the heavy lifting in this game. Not to say that the game isn't interesting or doesn't have some interesting choices or it isn't pleasurable to play, but this really is such a stellar production and a wonderful theme that's doing like the heavy lifting here. It really does show you, that theme is very important. Now, me personally, I happen to really be very interested in mechanisms, and that's generally what I like in a game. I like the game to have interesting choices, have interesting mechanisms. I like to play a very well-designed game. But I do really love theme. It's very important to me as well. I feel like I always want to have both. And this one, you can see though that really having a wonderful theme really can help for you to enjoy the other aspects of the game. I think if this game was not based on this theme or wasn't so wonderfully put together, it'd probably be pretty forgettable. But because it is a solid game and also has this wonderful theme, it really stands out. I think about, I talk about games that like inspire me or make me want to do things differently. I think of a game like Sky Team where I play that and it makes me think about, places I've been or places I want to go. This game really inspires me to think like, wow, I've been to some national parks, but it makes me think like, I should go to all the national parks. I get these little dreams and that's fantastic. Getting inspired in life is so important. It's like what drives us forward, really. The art and things, is so incredibly lovely. They just use these posters that are already already for sale, already used. And it's these wonderful tarot style cards. Everything is just like to the nines. The tokens are really, really wonderful. These animal shapes, different animal shapes for the wilds, which are cool. Linen finish on the instruction booklet. They really, really go out. They even have a little card that says like, hey, you can order these prints. And they're the actual prints that are used to promote these parks and their artwork, stamps, things like that. And I really, really love that. It makes me want to buy some of these because they really are gorgeous. And that's the thing. You sit down, you have this game all laid out in front of you, you have a little cup of tea, you have a cup of coffee, whatever, and you're just like, it's like, and the theme ties so wonderfully to that because you want to just go for this. You're like, this is just a nice little, trek through the woods. Look at the art here. It's much like walking through the woods. Look at this wonderful vignette here. But you're doing that in the game as you play the game. Now, this game can be like that. It can be really relaxing. You're playing through, you're trying to like get some points, you're trying to win, but you're just enjoying the whole production. Or it could be very, very competitive. This is the kind of game like, it's not overly complicated. It's a fairly simple game. But I think of a lot of like trick-taking games, very, very simple rules, but it's pretty cutthroat. You can play very, very viciously. You can play to win. And I think you can do the same thing here. So I think, you're playing to win, but that theme kind of infects you a little bit. Now let's get into the solo mode a little more heavily here. Now that we've talked about the general production. A lot of games like Uwe games and things will have the high score. Cascadia is another one you're trying to get a good score, etc. This game actually does feel very similar in weight and like theme. It really just kind of reminds me of the vibe I get from playing Cascadia solo, which I really enjoy as well. But a lot of those like Uwe games and stuff, tend to be high score games without any interaction. You're playing mainly, there's a couple of spots blocked. And this game feels somewhat like that, where you're getting that high score. But it does really feel a bit like you're playing an opponent as well, because the pieces are moving. And, let's talk about that for a second. The Rangers, their movement is much... you don't know what they're going to do exactly, like an opponent. You wouldn't know what an opponent's going to do, but it's not so wild that they could do anything. They're within parameters. They're going to move 1, 2, or 3. And that leads to some interesting choices. You can say, okay, well, I'm going to go to this spot here because I want to take that action. But if I move there and they get a 2, then they're going to move to the third spot. If they get a 3, they'll move to the third spot. And so you can kind of figure the odds that it's more likely that they're going to go to that third spot because of the where you move. Which, are they going to block something? Well, you can still use your campsite, but if you've used your campsite, maybe you don't want them to move there. But you also don't want them to keep collecting those weather tokens because those will charge up their events. and you can see the event coming, which I really like. You know, and almost the first way through, like if you get a couple of the tokens, they're not going to fill their tokens up depending on what, you know, whether tokens are out there. So it's not so dangerous, you know, but it does figure into your thinking. The other thing is when you get to the end of the track, you know, you have to worry like, hey, I don't want them. I want this card. I want to travel to this card. But if they go there, they're going to nix out one of those cards and you're going to have less choices. And if the one you were building towards, that's a little concerning. So that's something too. They can take your camera away. You know, there's a few things like first player token. If you lose that, they'll move a little faster and you won't be able to maybe get the weather token you want. So there's a lot of interesting little choices. You do know kind of what they could do. I think it's a really nice balance because it's not so wild. Like, I don't know what they're going to do on their turn. They could do anything. You don't have to think about what they're going to do in terms of like some games are like, you know, I just played a couple of games recently that their solo their solo rules are like, hey, make the best move for the person. You're not thinking about all that. Like they're moving on their own and it's very low tech. It's also, now I also often talk about when I talk about solo gaming, I hate having to learn a whole separate game system and then integrate the two game systems into my head and figure out what's different and what's not, and then also play the game. I hate that. I shouldn't use the word. I dislike that. I find that I don't get to play the game much because I'm just running the game. And in this one, you're playing the game. You're aware of what your opponent can do as you are in a regular game. And it does feel kind of like, I mean, there's not a ton of things an opponent can do. You might think like, oh, they're probably going for that one, which then means they might take this, et cetera, et cetera. But they're a good opponent. You got the extra little event thing to think about. It's just another level of planning. The events are kind of swingy. Sometimes, you know, they might say discard all of your sun. Okay, if you don't have any sun, no big deal. Some of them are really, really dangerous, though. Some of them can be a little more punishing, but then it just means you want to try to maybe take the sun or the rain, because those cards will cycle through. You know, like once they fill up one, maybe you get them to fill up one that's not as punishing, or you try to time it so you get rid of all your mountains before they make you get rid of all your mountains. And the theming is kind of cute there because it'll be like, you know, there's like the cold spell one, the fog. I really like the fog one because that means you put the next card face down. Then you don't know what the event's going to be. It's thematic. I mean, it's not like hugely impactfully thematic, but the theme is there and it is kind of cute. You go like, that's kind of cute. And I like that. So overall, I mean, you know, playing this game solo, I really enjoy it. It's easy to set up. It's enjoyable to play. It's not a super long game. The solo mode has some some differences, so they'll move a little variable depending on what their events are and what the gear cards that come out. But it's all within like you can see what their options are. So you can plan a little bit, but you don't know exactly. But you don't have to do a lot of heavy thinking for the solo player. Like the bot will act on its own. So that's very nice. So I get the same feeling out of this I would imagine that you would get out of a 2-player game, and it's just enjoyable. You know, so I highly recommend it. It's a very nice little production, as I say. On top of that. So yeah, hopefully that helped you decide whether or not this game is for you in a solo capacity. But for now, I gotta roll.